Post. And then you can let everybody in. Okay, have fun.
Thank you.
Okay, thanks. Well, a lot of people in this waiting room. Let me just kind of arrange my window a little bit. Okay, I'm going to start letting them in. Welcome, everyone. Just sit tight. Well, a lot of participants in this meeting, so let me get everyone in here. We're already up to 100, so let's see. Hello, everyone else that is just coming in here. Make sure your mics are muted. It looks like everyone's are, which is good. All right. Guess I can. Yep, I have the chat window open, which I will mention in just a second. All right. Well, I'm sure we're going to get some more people in here. I don't want to wait too much longer. I'll just let them in as we go. A couple teachers here. I got to get them in here. Okay. I'll let the other people in when the time comes. Hello, everyone. Welcome to a Breaking Down a Scene workshop. My name is Brian Quigley. I'm a teacher at Abington Senior High School. I'm super excited to introduce our special guest, producer, writer, director, Matt Spicer. Matt is an Upper Moreland grad who has had a lot of success since graduating from the USC School of Cinematic Arts. As you can see from the bio on his website, a lot of great stuff there. His first feature film as a director, Ingrid Goes West, which I watched again last night with my daughter, who's a huge Aubrey Plaza fan, is great. We're going to be talking about that today. We're super lucky and pleased to have him here today. If you have any questions during the session, please type them in the chat window. We have a lot of people here and we'll navigate as we go. Without further ado, I'd like to turn things over to our guest speaker, Matt Spicer.
Thanks, Brian. Hi, everybody. So glad to be here today. Part of the reason why I wanted to do this is because when I was a student in high school, I think the filmmaking process seemed so foreign to me. I didn't really understand how it worked. And so part of this was, wanting to demystify that process a little bit and give you guys a little bit of a window and a glimpse into how films are actually made and what a director's job is and how that works. And there's this quote that I wanted to share to sort of start things off from one of my favorite directors, David Fincher. And I think I can share it with you guys. Let's see. Bring it up here. There it is. Can you guys see that? Brian, give me a thumbs up if you, okay. So it's, I'll just read it for you. Directing ain't about drawing a neat little picture and showing it to the cameraman. I didn't want to go to film school. I didn't know what the point was. The fact is you don't know what directing is until the sun is setting and you've got to get 5 shots and you're only going to get 2. And part of the reason why I really relate to that is because, I mean, being on set, one of the most finite resources you have is time. You have your set hours in the day, you have to get your shots for the film. And, it's very rare that you're able to, especially on a low budget film like ours, where you're going to be able to get more time if you need it. So your job as a director is to kind of manage that process. And you've got a whole team of people that you have to kind of get all moving in the same direction. And, it just is inevitable that stuff's going to go wrong and stuff's not going to work out the way that you want it to. And I think that's the ultimate job of a director, is to really know your story, know your characters, because you're not going to get everything that you wanted, and your plan is going to go awry in some ways, or things are going to happen that are that you weren't sort of planning on. And so the more that you sort of know the story that you're telling and know your characters, you're going to be able to think on your feet and say, you know what, we don't actually need these 3 shots. These are the 2 that we actually do need. And I think that's a good, you know, the lesson of that is to just be flexible and be alive to sort of what's happening on set in front of you, and to trust your collaborators and trust your vision for the film. And so what I wanted to show you guys is a couple scenes from Ingrid. And I wanted to go through with Brian. We're going to read the script, or a couple scenes from the script. And then I'm going to show you the finished film, and we can sort of talk through, and you'll see sort of how it evolved from what was on the page to what we actually ended up putting in the film. And part of that is because, you know, we had some great actors who were really funny and came up with funny lines that, you know, were better than what I had and my co-writer Dave had come up with. Let me stop sharing. And part of that is because, yeah, on one of the days we just completely ran out of time, and we weren't able to sort of shoot what we had planned. And we had to, on the fly, think of how do we tell this part of the story and get the information that we need across to the audience in the most efficient way, because we're losing light, and we're gonna run out of time to shoot it. And but ironically, it ended up being one of the shots I'm most proud of in the film, and I'll explain why later. But just to show you guys what the benefits to sort of trusting yourself and trusting the process and trusting your collaborators, and not being so precious about what you had maybe written or planned on in the beginning, and being open to something new surprising you. So Brian, if you're ready, you're going to play. So just to set up the film for anyone who hasn't seen it. So the film is about a woman named Ingrid, who is kind of a loner, and she becomes obsessed with this girl. She's played by Aubrey Plaza. She becomes obsessed with this Instagram influencer named Taylor, played by Elizabeth Olsen, and moves to LA to try and become friends with her in real life. And she meets this guy, Dan, who's played by O'Shea Jackson Jr., who you might know from Straight Outta Compton. And he becomes kind of her boyfriend. He's a little bit obsessed with her. He's obsessed with Batman. And Taylor's brother, Nicky, played by, I'm blanking on his name, Billy. He basically kind of gets on to Ingrid and realizes that she's not exactly the wholesome character that she's pretending to be, and wants to expose her. Billy Magnuson, sorry, there you go. And so Ingrid sort of hatches this plan with Dan that they're going to kidnap him and try and scare him so that he leaves her alone and doesn't expose her, so she can continue being friends with Taylor. So why don't we get into it? I'm going to share my screen with the script, and then Brian and I are going to kind of read through it. So I'll read Ingrid and Nicky, and Brian will read Dan. Okay, can we everybody see that now? Brian, can you see the script?
Yep.
Great. Okay, so this is a scene. So we'll start with the scene where Ingrid has just told Dan that Ingrid sort of faked that Nicky has assaulted her, and so she's trying to convince Dan that they need to go do something about Nicky. And so we'll just jump in here. So Brian, will you jump in as Dan?
I have a great opening line.
Yeah.
This is bullshit. We just can't let him get away with this. You want me to go pound his ass?
No, if we're going to do something, we have to be smart about it. What would Batman do? Pinto looks at Ingrid, intrigued. Interior, exterior, U-Haul van, night. Ingrid and Pinto are parked down the street from the Malibu house with the headlights off. Pinto is wearing a trench coat, dressed in all black. Ingrid points outside. There's his car. Her POV, Nicky's red Mustang, is parked out front. Pinto shifts in his seat, looking anxious.
We're not going to hurt him, are we?
No, of course not. You're just going to scare him a little, so he'll leave me alone. Just show him the gun, put on the handcuffs, and make him get in the van.
Then what?
Then we drive out to the desert, and you tell him you'll kill him unless he leaves me alone.
And what are you gonna do?
I'm the victim here, remember? Pinto takes a quick vape hit. He shakes his head.
Fuck it. This is crazy. I can't do this. Let's just call the cops and let them deal with it.
You can't back out now. I thought you said you wanted to protect me.
I do. I'm just nervous. I've never done anything like this. I'm freaking the fuck out right now.
Ingrid touches Pinto's face, stroking his hair. Hey, look at me. It's gonna work, okay? I promise. POV shot. Nikki exits the Malibu house. Quick, he's coming. Beat. Pinto takes a deep breath, steeling himself. He pulls on a ski mask and holds up a handgun, cocking it.
Let's roll.
Exterior Malibu house, night. The back of the van opens and Pinto hops out, creeping along parked cars, head low. He watches from the shadows as Nicky makes his way down towards the street, whistling. Nicky approaches the Mustang, taking out his keys. As he reaches for the handle, Pinto steps out from the shadows, gun raised. Nicky looks up, startled. He raises his hands. Oh, that's me. Whoa, hey man, easy. You want my wallet? Here, take it. Nicky reaches for his back pocket.
Don't move.
Nicky freezes, a tense beat. Pinto steels himself, raising the gun higher, his hand shaking.
Turn around.
Nicky stares at Pinto, then turns around slowly as Pinto takes out a pair of handcuffs. Am I under arrest? Intercut with interior-exterior U-Haul van. Ingrid watches excitedly as Pinto cuffs Nicky's hands behind his back. Her plan is actually working. Pinto tightens the cuffs. Nicky peers over his shoulder. What's this about? Listen, if you need money...
Stop talking.
Okay, relax. Pinto jabs the gun into Nicky's back, pushing him down the street towards the van. As he reaches the back of the van, he notices the back door is open and turns, suddenly nervous. Can we talk about this? Pinto takes out a burlap sack and pulls it over Nicky's head. Seriously? Pinto forces Nicky into the van and slams the door shut. So, I mean, honestly, even reading it now, I'm like, oh my God, that is so much dialogue that we just cut out. But you'll see. So obviously, what the thrust of that scene is that we need to, show that, Dan's a little bit nervous about doing this. Ingrid's sort of manipulating him a little bit, and that, he kidnaps Nicky and puts him in the van. Pretty simple action, but it takes about, a page and a half to sort of get there. And so let me show you the final scene, and then I think we can talk about, and then we can talk about it. So let me share this. Uh-oh. I don't think it's gonna let me share that. Hang on. Hang on. I just got like a digital rights management thing. I don't know if it's because there's so many people in here. See if Hulu will let me do it.
That's what I was thinking.
The following is intended only for...
All right, I think it's gonna let me do it this way. Sorry guys, bear with me for 1 second. Okay. All right, so it's gonna play an ad. So I'm gonna try and mute this while that happens. So basically, like, having O'Shea, you'll see that a lot of the dialogue in the scene in the van is different. And part of that is because O'Shea was such a great improviser that he came up with such funny stuff in the moment. He's actually someone who loves Batman. And so he was able to ad-lib some stuff that was really on character, that was just so funny and cracking us up on set. So we decided to use that, obviously, rather than make him say every line exactly how it was in the script. And him and Aubrey played off each other really well. She's also a great improviser. And the scene with Nikki, which you'll see, I mean, in the script, it's like all this action and dialogue of like they go across the street, and you know, and it would have taken us probably half a day to shoot everything if we had tried to do it as written. And on that day, we were in this house in Hancock Park in Los Angeles, and you know, we had this moment where we sort of realized we're not going to get all this stuff that we planned on shooting. And so my producers kind of came over to me and were like, hey, you know, what's the plan here? Because we're not going to get all this. And so I sort of huddled up with my DP, and we had a Steadicam operator that day, which is sort of like a guy who's does like, it's not handheld, but it's like a floaty, you know, it's a device that lets you shoot on the fly, kind of. You don't have to be on a dolly or mounted down. You're a little bit looser and able to move around a lot. And we took basically 15 minutes and we're like, okay, let's come up with one shot that is going to tell this entire story basically and show how Pinto's going to get Nikki into the back of the van. And, you know, we ended up doing like, I want to say maybe 10 takes or somewhere thereabouts of just this one shot, because that's basically all we had time for. But it ended up being one of my favorite shots in the movie because I think we were able to take basically a page of stuff and all this dialogue that's sort of unnecessary of Nikki being like, hey, what are you doing? Oh my God, you know, and then really just condense it down to one really elegant, nice shot that shows what we're trying to get across. So I think it'll let me share it now, crossing my fingers, and we'll watch the finished movie here and then we'll talk about it. Is that working? No? Brian, are you seeing anything?
No, it's just it looks like it wants to work. Like I can see a thumbnail. When you...
this dude.
So interesting because I can hear the audio, but not the picture. Just really doesn't want us to
No.
guys this movie. All right, I have one last plan, which is I can put in the Blu-ray into my screen and then film my screen showing it for you.
It won't play from there. I wonder if it is because there's so many viewers.
Yeah, I was gonna say, because I tried it last night and it totally worked.
No.
But it was just me and my wife. So it probably didn't care. Oh, this is terrible.
I don't, well, I'm gonna check real quick.
I'm gonna stop screen sharing for a second. No, I don't think that scene isn't on YouTube, I don't believe. All right, well, I'm gonna get that working, but in the meantime, why don't we take some questions and then I will load up, I'm gonna load up the DVD and then I'm gonna literally just do this the jankiest way possible.
Okay, while you're doing that, I will
yeah, so Brian, will you
kind of look over chat and pick things out for you maybe that you can answer afterwards if we get things rolling. Anyone who has any questions about I don't know how many of you have seen Ingrid Goes West. Highly recommend it. Really good. Super powerful opening to the film. Happened fast and furiously in the opening.
All right, I'm literally opening the Blu-ray right now. I've never actually watched my own Blu-ray of the film. This is what we're being forced to do.
Yeah, you can keep your questions coming. A couple people have them, and I'll.
Okay, I see. What was it like working with Elizabeth Olsen and Aubrey Plaza in your movie? Were you all struck by how good they were? Yes, the short answer is yes. I mean, Aubrey, like I think I mentioned before, Aubrey is a really talented improviser. And, you know, just every take that she did in the film was completely different and alive and different in its own and special in its own way. And so it's always a pleasure to work with actors like that when you're being constantly surprised, because by the time that you get on set and you're actually making a film, you've been living with the script for at least a year and usually more. And, you know, so it's at that point, you've kind of heard it in your head so many times. So when you have an actor who's able to surprise you and do things that are unexpected, that's sort of the most exciting thing, because and then all of a sudden you're almost like an audience member watching the movie, and you can really be objective in a way that you're not able to, you know, when you've been working on it for so long. And what was really fun actually was when I met with Elizabeth, or Lizzie, as she prefers to be called. She was not she right off the bat said, I'm not very comfortable with improv. I don't love it. And I sort of in my head, I was like, oh my God, you know, freaking out, because I just knew how much Aubrey loved to do improv. And I was just like, how is this going to work? You know, so I really had no idea. And the first day she showed up, actually, the first scene that we shot with her and Aubrey was the scene in the desert. For those of you who've seen the movie, there's a scene in the desert where they're getting their picture taken by the guy at the gas station. And it was so funny because within seconds, Aubrey made Lizzie feel so comfortable. And by the end of the movie, Lizzie was like, I love improv. It's amazing. You know, she just wanted to improv every scene. There were actually, I had to be like, okay, Lizzie, like, can you just say the lines like from the script for this one part? She just got so excited by it. And that was really fun to kind of watch the two of them play off of each other, and just enjoying the process of watching two great actors like that, like really inhabit their characters, was just like the biggest joy as a director. So anyway, that's just a little story, but yes, the short answer is yes, it was amazing. Let's see what else we got. How did you sell your movie and get a studio to give you a budget? Well, that's sort of a multi-part thing. So we didn't have a studio. The movie, Ingrid, was an independently financed film. And what that means is you literally just try to find someone who wants to invest in a movie. So it's not a very glamorous process. You kind of meet with a lot of people, a lot of just rich people who want to make movies, and you try to convince them that they're not gonna be flushing their money down the toilet, you know, that you're actually gonna make something good and be able to get them their money back, and maybe even make them money. And so, you know, it was a process of just meeting with a lot of different financiers, and part of that was set up through my agency, and connecting with people that way. And some of it was through personal connections. And, but it really is kind of the Wild West. Like it's not like you go to the store and you're like, hey, here's my movie. Or you go to the studio and you're like, here's my movie. It's just kind of like, you just kind of cobble it together. I think we ended up having 4 or 5 different financiers that we kind of, you know, all kind of pulled their money together, and that's how we made it. And then when we got into Sundance, which obviously was really exciting for us, that's sort of a marketplace for independent films. So buyers, you know, in our case, Neon was a buyer who, I don't know if you guys watched the Oscars, but they had Parasite was their won Best Picture this year. That was their movie. They were a brand new distributor that year, and so we didn't really know them. They didn't have a track record, but we just really liked them. And so they sort of watch your movie, and then people bid on it, almost like at an auction, you know, and it happens in the span of 24 to 48 hours where people kind of come to the table and say, hey, we think your movie's worth this much. And you debate with you hear their pitch, and you kind of debate with your producers which place you want to go with. And if you're lucky, you have more than one option. Or if you're lucky, you have one option. But it's really, I was really surprised because I think being not from the world of Hollywood, I always kind of, all I knew about that process was what I'd seen in movies and on like Entourage and stuff. And it really is kind of like you expect that it's going to be a lot more, I guess, organized than it actually is. And it's kind of this mad scramble all the way through the process. Yeah, anyway, I was really surprised at how crazy the process is and that it really isn't smooth at all. What else? Oh, wow, a lot of questions coming in. Okay. I have a question. Did you shoot with multiple cameras at once, or do you film the different parts of the scene in different shoots? We did some scenes. I mean, anytime you have multiple cameras on set, it's more expensive because you have to have a whole camera team around you for each camera. So because of our budget, we did not have a lot of cameras on set. There were a couple days where we did have multiple cameras, because just in terms of what we needed to get that day, we knew we wouldn't be able to get it if we just had one camera. So it was sort of like, let's spend a little bit more money to make sure that we get everything. But for the most part, it was just one camera team. I honestly prefer to work that way for the most part, because it's easier to concentrate when you have multiple cameras going. You're sort of at the monitor, like trying to be like, where do I look, you know? And so it's a little bit easier, I think, for everyone to be focused on what's happening when there's just one camera. Do you prefer working with actors who almost can do what you do, or do you prefer working with actors who don't want to be a part of that process and just act? It's interesting. I think I loved working with Aubrey because when I first met with her, I really felt like she thinks like a filmmaker. I didn't realize this, but she actually went to film school. She didn't plan on becoming an actor until I think she just kind of fell into it. And I did appreciate that, especially as a first-time director, just having an actor who wasn't just thinking about their part. If she was thinking about the whole film, and she was asking me stuff like, you know, how are you going to shoot this scene? And just questions that I wasn't expecting to get from, you know, an actor. And it was refreshing. It was exciting. I thought it made me feel like I was in good hands and that she wasn't going to let me fail, because she was more experienced than me at that point, obviously. And so it just made me feel like, oh, she's actually going to have good ideas and elevate the whole project. So yeah, I did, and especially in this case, I did prefer that. All right, we're almost up and running here. I can't believe, thank you guys so much for bearing with us with this technical stuff. It's really, let's see, what do we got? How long does it take to shoot and edit an entire movie? You know, it really varies. Ingrid was a pretty relatively quick process. Like, I mean, we finished the script in 2015, sort of November 2015. And we shot it in the summer of 2016. And then it came out in 2017. So I would say it was almost like a 2-year process from when we finished the script to when it actually came out. And that's pretty fast. And part of that was, I think, because I was concerned that, you know, who knew what Instagram was whether it was going to become irrelevant, the movie was going to become irrelevant. I mean, even as we were shooting the movie, halfway through to the shoot, they completely changed the interface, the look of Instagram. And so we had shot some of this, half the movie was with one look of Instagram, and then we had to end up going back and digitally changing some of the shots. So the technology moved so fast that we were like, let's get the movie going and make it pretty fast so that we're not like completely irrelevant. And thankfully it wasn't. I mean, Instagram's still going strong now, 3 years later after the movie came out. So, but yeah, I mean, I produced a movie called Flower that took 4 or 5 years to get made. So it really does vary. You know, sometimes movies take 10 years to get made. All right, so we're gonna try something here. It's never been done before. I'm going to literally shoot my screen, and hopefully you guys will be able to see and hear at least and get an idea for what's going on here. So hang on one second. Let me try this. Okay, so this is my, let's see. All right.
Oh, please, nah, man, this shit
Whoops, it skipped ahead, hang on.
Get it. Try to hear that shit.
You don't know what he's capable of.
I don't give a fuck, Ingrid. Look at your face. What am I supposed to do?
Look. We need to be smart about this, okay? I need you to be Batman.
I am Batman. We're not gonna kill this dude, right?
No. No. We're just gonna scare him a little bit. We're gonna take him out to the desert, and you're gonna tell him that if he doesn't leave me alone, you're gonna fucking kill him.
We should call the police.
No,
You call the police, let
come
him
on.
say, nah, man, this shit just seems sketchy.
Okay. Keep it together. I thought you were Batman.
I am Batman. Batman don't do shit like this. I arrest people, take them to Arkham Asylum. They possibly get out a few months later, and the cycle continues,
All right,
all right?
look, he deserves this. You saw my case. He fucked me up.
That's right. He fucking hit you. Tupac said it'd be days like this.
Hey. Love you.
Don't move.
Did you guys think this through?
Did that work? That worked kind of? Okay.
Yes.
Yikes. So there we are, 20 minutes later. You guys saw the finished thing. But hopefully that gave you an idea. I mean, so, you know, all that action that we read where it's like, he gets out of the car, goes across the street, he grabs him, he puts the handcuffs on, all this stuff. That just became one shot of following Nikki coming out. And you probably couldn't see it because it's, you know, going through Zoom, but he's actually, you actually, as we pan past, you see Dan lurking in the shadows as Nikki walks by, and then he sort of comes up behind him with the gun to his head, Batman voice, and then you cut to him in the back of the van. And so it was sort of this really simple, elegant solution to, you know, how do we take a page and a half of action and dialogue and all this stuff and condense it down. And anyway, that's one of the shots I'm most excited about. When I rewatched the film, I'm like, oh, because I know how hard it was to do that in the moment. Whew, okay, wow. Let's see. All right, well, let's open it up to more questions here. We got, how much time do we have left, Brian?
20 minutes.
Great. All right. How many films have you directed? Just one, unfortunately. I'm working on a second one right now that will hopefully shoot next year. So stay tuned for that. The pandemic hasn't been helping the situation for sure. Were there times you shot something and thought you could have shot it differently? That's actually a great question because that's very on theme to, I think, this whole thing. And also just this entire Zoom in general is sort of like, I think if there's any lesson to take away from this, it's that I think the most important job is, I mean, honestly, any creative person or anything in life is that, you know, it's good to go in with a plan, but obviously things are going to happen that you're not expecting, whether it's the movie that isn't going to play over Zoom, or you run out of time to shoot stuff, or you know, whatever, and you kind of have to react in the moment. And I think it's really good to be flexible. I think that when I've seen people sort of get into trouble, it's where they stuck too close to the plan and refused to sort of let go, out of probably a fear that they, you know, you weren't going to be able to come up with something better. And so, you know, of course, anytime I watch something that I've done, I'm always like nitpicking it to say, oh, I wish I had done this differently. I wish I'd done that differently. I think that's really normal. And I think that the irony is it's usually the things where the stuff that I don't feel that way about, for instance, with Ingrid, is like, and that shot is the times when I actually felt like I came up with something in the moment and came up with something on set, and it wasn't the plan. It was something that was different I deviated from the plan in some way. And I think those are the things that I don't look back and wish I could have done differently, because I realize, and you know, I feel proud of those moments where I was able to be quick on my feet. God, there's so many questions. I want to get to all of them. All right, let's see. How do you get yourself into the world of Hollywood? That's sort of a broader question, but I think that, at least in my own experience, the best thing you could do is to write something, because writing is the one thing that you can do in Hollywood for free. The only thing it costs you is time, and your energy that you're sort of pouring into it. And especially in this time right now, everyone that I know, because there's not a lot of stuff that's shooting right now, everyone that I know is sort of writing something. I'm writing something, you know, and my wife is writing something, and it's the one thing we can kind of do. We're in our houses when we're alone. And it was the one thing I could do when I graduated film school, and, you know, didn't have a job lined up, didn't have any money, and was just kind of like freaking out and didn't know what I was going to do. And the one thing that I could do, I had control over, was that I could write every day, you know? And so that was kind of, that summer after I graduated film school, one of my college buddies, Max, and I, we wrote a script that summer. And that script ended up getting us our managers and our agents, just off the strength of it. And the script never got made, but it didn't matter, because people read it and they said, well, there's some talent here. We see something here that we could maybe make money off of at some point in the future. And so let's invest in these guys. And I think, you know, I think that's the best way. Still, I think the best way to get your foot in the door. The other thing I would say is I mean, you have a phone that is an incredible device, you know, with TikTok and Instagram and all these things. My wife has been doing these things called quarantines. She's called them quarantines over the pandemic, but she's basically just been redoing scenes from movies that she loves and playing all the different characters. And it's funny because it's kind of gotten her, a couple of them have gone viral. She did one with Dylan O'Brien that went viral. That was like a remake of The Social Network, where she's playing Mark Zuckerberg and he was playing Andrew. What's that character's name? I don't even remember. Andrew Garfield's character. But anyway, it was just like a fun way of keeping busy, but it actually ended up getting noticed, you know? And so you never know what is going to connect with people. And I think, you know, just the more that you're sort of making stuff on your own that you can do within your own power, that's what's going to get people to take notice. So there's really no one way to do it, I guess. It's a tough answer, but just to be making stuff and writing stuff. And how do you pick your actors? That's interesting. I think that's the easiest way to pick actors is to just be watching stuff all the time. I mean, I watch so much many movies, so many TV shows, and I always have kind of a running list of like, even for like actors in smaller parts that just surprise you. Those are usually my favorite ones anyway, is the ones that are like, we've all seen those actors that pop up in like I feel like Margot Martindale's one of those actors where if you look her up, you'll just be like, I've seen her in 100 things, and she's so great in everything. And you might not know her name, but you know her face. So I love, there's a website called IMDb, which probably most of you are familiar with, but I love going on IMDb and just clicking on different people, and you're always like, oh my God, they were in that movie. Or, a lot of times I'll do it with if I see a film and I love the way it's shot, I'll look it up and I'll be like, oh my God, they shot this other movie that I loved. And you kind of realize that who you're a fan of by seeing, just following your sort of your own reactions to things. And like Aubrey was somebody who was just a fan of her work over the years, and Lizzie also. I mean, everyone in the movie I was a fan of from different things. The guy who played Nicky, Billy Magnuson, I saw him in an episode of The Leftovers, the HBO show, and just thought, I was like, he just blew me away. And my co-writer and I were just like, we need to get him. And then we chased him down. We chased down his manager and finally got him to read the script. And he agreed to do it. So it was really like, yeah, just watching stuff and falling in love with people. If you had to pick one actor, I don't know how to answer that one. Someone said there was a glare on the screen. Okay, yeah.
A lot of the later questions, maybe you could just speak to the whole film school experience, or a couple of questions are about, well, what if you can't go to film school? Can you still make your way in the industry? I think there's a handful of questions that are related to that.
I think, it's funny because I did go to film school, but a lot of my favorite directors didn't. I think that it's, I think the short answer is there's no one path to getting anywhere in the film world. I think my parents really wanted me to go to college. All I wanted to do was do film. And so I think the compromise was like, well, I'll go to college for film, and so that was the compromise. And I think I didn't really have a plan B other than that. And I really, really wanted to go to California and go to USC. So that just sort of became the path. But it certainly isn't the only path. And I think, there were certain things. I think what film school does give people is it allows you to kind of make your embarrassing first films in a safe environment where nobody sees them, because I think a lot of people, sometimes you see people, they make their first movie and it's like, you're sort of like, oh, you should have just like written this and like put it in a drawer, and maybe not shown it to people because it's like, you haven't like, it's, I think somebody described it to me once, or I read it in a book once as flushing your psyche out through your art, and it's like always like, the main character is always kind of a veiled version of you, and it's like your life, but it's like all the character names are changed or whatever. And sometimes people do a great job of that. I mean, Lena Dunham, built her whole career off of doing that, and she's really great at using her life and using it as fodder for her art. But I think for me, I think that was always a dead end, and I think. I don't know. It allowed me to sort of find my way and find my voice safely. But I mean, I'm trying to think. So, I mean, outside of film school, I mean, when I went to film school, we didn't have iPhones. We didn't have to get access to a camera that could shoot something that looked even remotely professional. It was like, you'd have to get a $10,000 camera. I didn't have that kind of money. So, getting to film school, we got to shoot on film. We got to use, professional equipment and stuff. And again, now, not to sound like a broken record, but now with your phone, I mean, you have better tools than we had at USC, and we were paying like $40,000 a year to have access to all their equipment and stuff. You have that on your phone now that you can get for $1,000. So I think I mean, there's really no reason why you can't be sort of making stuff, and even also to not even think about like the making stuff is like getting it out and getting it seen by people. The fact that you have all these different distribution methods now of Instagram or TikTok, and it sounds silly, but there's people doing really sophisticated things. You know, like I remember seeing that video of those stunt performers that did, I don't know if you guys saw that, there was that video that the stunt performers where they were like acted like they were fighting with the camera and whatever. I mean, that was really creative, and just them using whatever tools they had while we were all on lockdown. But that went, I mean, I think everybody in the world, I feel like, has seen that video. So I don't know. I think it's a really, really great time to be able to be making stuff, and it's the playing field has been leveled. And I think now the biggest challenge is, well, how do I stand out? How do I get people to notice me and notice what I'm doing? And you know, that I think is the big question. And it's really, you just have to kind of, I think, do what you're interested in. The more that you're trying to chase a trend or something, I think that's never going to work out. I think you just kind of have to amuse yourself in a way and kind of do what's interesting to you. Like, just to use my wife as an example, like she just was making these videos that were just fun for her and didn't expect anything of them, but she was really like pouring herself into them, and it ended up working out. And so, you know, in my experience, the things, whether it's film school or whatever, the things that have sort of led to success for me are when I was sort of like, I don't care what the reaction to this is, I really want to do it. And even with Ingrid, I had another film that I had written that didn't end up getting made. And it was sort of depressing because I was like, I needed a lot more money than we ended up getting for Ingrid to make it. And I was like, I don't know what I'm going to do. And the idea for Ingrid came up, and I was like, you know what, let's just make this. If we have to go shoot it for, you know, $100,000 or whatever with our friends, like we'll go do that version, you know? And it was sort of like, I stopped waiting for somebody to give me permission to make the movie that I wanted to make. And of course, ironically, that's the one that ended up getting financed and getting the actors and stuff. But it was sort of like, I think it was a mentality of saying, I'm not going to sit around. I'm not going to ask for permission to make this film. I'm just going to go make it. And if you want to get on board, great. And if not, who cares? I think that's kind of the mentality that you need to have. And that applies whether you're going to film school or whether you're making stuff in your living room. You just kind of have to go forward and not really care what other people think. Any other good ones, Brian? I haven't been scrolling through like you have, maybe.
Well, one thing that's maybe not directly one of the questions, but well, that I'm sort of curious about. I mean, you've worn a bunch of different hats: producer, writer, director. Maybe you could speak to the differences between them, what you see as the purpose of the role, what you get out of it, what you might enjoy about the different things. And if you could, do you like to have control in all of those phases, or is it something that is too much?
Let's see, the difference. I mean, I would say the director needs to have an understanding of sort of everything. And I think that's why I probably prefer that, because I'm a little bit of a perfectionist control freak. And so I like to have my hands in all the different, you know, departments and have, you know, it combines every interest of like music, sound design, acting, like cinematography, photography. So it's just, that's I think why I love directing, because you're kind of having to do everything. But some people don't like that. You know, it is a really stressful, high pressure job. And so I think there's plenty of people who like to just kind of stay focused on in their lane and their contribution. You know, most editors I know, they like to just be in their little hole, like editing in front of their computer and not having to talk to other people. So if, you know, and same thing with writers for the most part, it's like, if you're a little bit more antisocial, those are great jobs for you. You can still have a really successful career in the film industry and not have to interact with that many people. I think it's part of the reason why I hate writing so much, even though, it's such a necessary part of the process, because you're just sitting in a room by yourself for so long, just banging your head against the wall. And I do it because I'm like, well, it leads to me getting on set when doing the thing that I love to do. So I kind of suffer through it, but it's not, I would say, a fun process. And producing is probably the hardest one to define, because you see the title producer at the end of the movie. And I think even more so than any of the other roles, everyone's like, what does a producer do? And the answer is like, there's a lot of different kinds of producers. I mean, you could get a producing credit just by financing a movie. So if you're just a rich guy and you want to finance a movie, you can get a producing credit. But you also can get a producing credit if you're developing the script, and you might work on a script for 2 or 3 years without getting paid, just getting that script into the place where it's ready to be shot. And that might get you a producing credit. You could also get a producing credit if you're on set. You're the on-set producer and you're sort of in charge of doing a budget, doing a schedule, making deals with the actors, making deals with the crew. It's a much more like, it's more like if it was like a company, you'd be more like the CFO, you're sort of in charge of like managing the money. And so you have a finite amount of money, you have your budget, right? So your budget might be, on a Marvel movie, it might be $200 million, and so you're in charge of how's that $200 million going to turn into a completed great movie. That's a really, really, that's a lot of pressure to have on somebody, and the director's job is to focus on the creative side of that. And the producer's job is to say, okay, well, look, you want 100 extras for this scene. Well, guess what? You're only going to get 50. Or if you want 100, you're going to have to give up something else to get that, because we only have so much money. So it's not, my favorite thing to do, because it is a lot of hard decisions like that. And I've had those conversations too. Because I've been a producer, and they're crucial. Good producer is crucial, I think, to getting good movies made, because they know how to stretch a dollar, and they have relationships that they can lean on to say, you know what, like, I know this great sound mixer who's usually charges this much, but I can get him for half because I know I'm going to hire him on some other huge movie and he's going to get paid. And so I think that's where a producer is really helpful, is like having those relationships and having that experience to be able to, again, like every movie's different. Our movie was the catering budget on a Marvel movie, maybe, you know what I mean? It's like literally nothing. And, so, our producers were really crucial in making sure that we were able to get everything that we needed to make the film and to make it good. But it was certainly not easy and not fun. Did that answer the question, Brian? I don't know.
Yeah, definitely. So I think a lot of students have that question, like, what does a producer do? And I think you explained it.
I still don't know. Sometimes I'm like, what did that guy do? There's like people on movies that I've worked on, and I'm like, I never met that person. I don't know. How did they get a producing credit? I would imagine
in a 60-second closing, because I know we're given a little bit of time to move between sessions. There was the last question. I never mentioned you directed an episode of Dollface. The question was, what's the difference between directing a feature like Ingrid and a series like Dollface?
Well, Dollface was interesting because I didn't write that. So that was written by Jordan Weiss. And I was sort of a hired gun on that. So they already had a script. They already had Kat Dennings, and I sort of was like, came in and pitched my vision for it. And so it was a little bit like you're like a guest in somebody else's house. So it was interesting in that way. But you're also saying, well, look, here's what I can bring to the table and my sort of vision for how to do this. And that was sort of like, whereas Ingrid was a little bit more of like gritty, flying by the seat of our pants. I mean, we wanted to make something that felt like big and glossy and fun. And so it was fun to sort of play in that world, and it was a different tone for sure. We had a talking cat in that, cat lady. So, a little bit different vibe from Ingrid, but I don't know. It was interesting. I mean, a pilot is a lot more like doing a movie, because there isn't like a set like look for the show yet. You're kind of setting all those things. So there's a lot of decisions that need to be made. And obviously you're collaborating with the showrunner and with the creator and the star and all that stuff and the producers. So it's a lot more collaborative, I would say. That's a big difference. And you have less time. I mean, we shot the pilot for Dollface in, I want to say, I feel like it was like 6 days or something. It was not a lot of time, you know, and it's pretty ambitious for a comedy show. And for Ingrid, for example, we had 25 days. So, you know, the TV schedule is really, really, it's rigorous. You're shooting, you know, 6 or 7 pages a day usually. And it's, you know, you're just moving. You don't really have time to second guess yourself. So it was for sure it was like boot camp almost. I had like go back to film school a little bit because I was like, man, I'm really being put to the test here in a lot of ways. And there were a couple really tough days there where I was just like, yeah, it was interesting. It was a really, really fun and challenging experience. And that's also interesting too, because I've also done episodic where I was like, you know, episode 7, not episode 1, where the look of the show's already been established and the actors already know what they're doing. And so you're kind of just coming in and you're really just like, hey, I'm Matt, like I'll be directing this episode now. And they're all kind of like, yeah, we've done this before. Yeah, we get it. And you're just kind of like, you know, you're just helping to facilitate and keep things moving and going along and answering questions for the actors and, you know, blocking and stuff like that. So it's really, really different from doing film where you're kind of making every tiny little decision. In TV, I would say the director's, you know, maybe the third or fourth most important person on set. There's other people who are above you who you're sort of answering to. So that's probably the biggest difference.
Well, on behalf of everyone here, I want to thank you, Matt, for giving your time. It's very generous for you to give back to these young filmmakers, and I hope they appreciate it as much as I do. We're out of time. Thanks, everybody, for your attendance. A lot of people giving you shout outs and thank you so much in the comments.
Oh yeah, no, thank you guys. Thanks for rolling with that. That was some technical difficulties, but we got through it together.
It's a good lesson in filmmaking. Sometimes things get thrown your way and you just got to figure it out.
Oh yeah.
All right. Well, thank you. Thanks a lot, everybody.
Thanks, Brian.
We'll see you around. Yep, you too, Matt.
Thanks so much, man.
Thank you all.
Thank you so much.
All right. Thanks so much, Matt.
Thanks, guys. Thanks, everybody.
Make sure everybody is